Hello and welcome to Stories of Science. Here, we look back on humanity's long journey to understand the world. The questions, the failures, and the breakthroughs that slowly changed how we see the universe and ourselves. We tell science as stories. Apollo 11, the moment we landed on the moon. In July 1969, Neil Armstrong took that legendary first step onto the moon's surface. Looking back at Earth, he slowly said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." That moment became an iconic milestone in human history. The success of Apollo 11 wasn't just a peak in America's space exploration, it was a symbol of the courage and wisdom of all humanity. When Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stood there, on that silent, barren landscape, they didn't just make history, they wrote a bold chapter in the story of our quest to explore the cosmos. But here's the thing. Most people remember that famous line, but how many truly understand the struggles and innovations that went into making it happen? Back in 1961, President John F. Kennedy set a seemingly impossible goal: send an American to the moon and bring them safely back. His announcement didn't just shake the world, it kick-started a relentless journey that saw countless scientists and engineers working tirelessly toward that lofty dream. Did you know how many hidden challenges, breakthroughs, and untold stories were buried in that mission? Let's pull back the curtain and step into the heart of the Apollo 11 mission. We'll revisit the little-known details and untold struggles behind it all. Kennedy's vow in 1961 was like a trumpet call, signaling the beginning of a grand adventure into space. Sure, back then, our technology was a far cry from the sophisticated space systems we have today, but the US government made a bold promise to accomplish something no one had ever done before in human history. In the 8 years that followed, technological breakthroughs, countless failures, and even more comebacks turned this impossible mission into a reality. From designing the rockets to calculating navigation systems, to developing the lunar module, it was all one huge challenge after another. Apollo 11 was more than just humanity's first step on the moon. It was a victory for science, innovation, and the unbreakable will of humankind. The moon, forever drifting silently in the dark void of space, has always been there, calling to explorers. And its call continues to inspire generation after generation of dreamers and doers. On July 20, 1969, Apollo 11 made history, marking one of humanity's greatest achievements. 3 astronauts journeyed through the vastness of space, landing on the moon and returning safely to Earth. Each of them, his background, personality, and sense of humor played a huge role in making this mission legendary. Today, let's take a deeper dive into the lives of these 3 iconic figures, and how they went from ordinary people to stepping onto that mysterious moon, ready to face unimaginable challenges. First up, we have Neil Armstrong, the man who became a living legend. From a young age, Armstrong had a passion for flying. As a child, he flew in his father's small aircraft, soaring through the blue skies and over the endless horizon. That experience stuck with him, fueling his ambition to become a pilot, and eventually, to fly into space. He realized this dream when he became the first person to walk on the moon. But here's the twist: despite becoming a hero, Armstrong remained humble. Even though billions around the world witnessed that historic moment of him stepping onto the moon, he often said, "I'm just a lucky, ordinary guy." That line says a lot about who he was. He never saw his achievement as some grand accident, but as a product of teamwork. His humility and down-to-earth nature made him the everyman hero in the eyes of the public. But no matter how modest he was, his name is forever etched in history as a symbol of space exploration. Next, let's talk about Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon and one of the funniest astronauts to ever go to space. Aldrin's love for flying ran deep, influenced by his father, who was a Navy pilot. From a young age, Aldrin was immersed in aviation culture, and as a fighter pilot, his flying skills were top-notch. But it wasn't just his flying that made him stand out. Aldrin's sense of humor was legendary. Even during the high-stress moments of the mission, he kept things light. "I'm the first person to have lunch on the moon. Guess I could start a restaurant," he once joked. Imagine having lunch on the moon. This was Aldrin's way of easing the tension and adding some warmth to the mission. His humor wasn't just for entertainment, it brought a human touch to the entire operation, helping the crew stay positive and work as a team, even under pressure. That lightheartedness became one of his unseen contributions, keeping morale high and ensuring the crew's mental stability in the face of a monumental task. Behind the jokes, however, was an incredible amount of preparation. As the second man on the moon, Aldrin's job might not have been as famous as Armstrong's, but without his coordination and support, Armstrong's task would have been impossible. On the lunar surface, Aldrin was in charge of conducting scientific experiments, collecting moon samples, and handling important details of the mission. His teamwork with Armstrong was nothing short of perfect. And then there's Michael Collins, the loneliest astronaut in Apollo 11. Collins' role may have seemed simpler, flying the command module and making sure Armstrong and Aldrin were safely landed and could return. But Collins didn't get to walk on the moon. Instead, while Armstrong and Aldrin were stepping onto the lunar surface, Collins was flying alone in orbit, circling the moon, performing his duties from the command module. Collins famously joked, "I'm the loneliest guy on the moon." Though it was self-deprecating, his words spoke volumes about the responsibility he carried. What he did was crucial. Without Collins staying on course in the command module, Armstrong and Aldrin wouldn't have been able to complete their mission and return to Earth. The command module wasn't designed for long stays, it had a limited window of time to carry out its complex flight tasks. Collins, the unsung hero, was the key to the mission's success. He ensured that the two astronauts made it to the moon and came home safely. Despite not walking on the moon himself, Collins wasn't bitter. After the mission, he wrote in his autobiography, "I didn't walk on the moon, but I made a significant contribution to the mission." His quiet determination and sense of responsibility made him a hero in his own right. His work may not have been as visible to the public, but without him, the mission wouldn't have succeeded. The backgrounds, personalities, and humor of these three astronauts were essential to the success of the mission. Armstrong's humility, Aldrin's humor, and Collins' resilience, all of them played a crucial role in Apollo 11's success. It was through their teamwork that this daunting task was accomplished, and humanity took its first steps on the moon. From these three astronauts, we can see the unwavering pursuit of space exploration and the never-give-up attitude that defines human spirit. Whether it was Collins flying solo in the command module, Aldrin cracking jokes on the moon, or Armstrong staying calm and humble, they became inseparable parts of this historic mission. Through their efforts, we didn't just land on the moon, we set the stage for humanity's next great adventure in the cosmos. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11's three astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins took off from Kennedy Space Center aboard the mighty Saturn V rocket, embarking on one of the most exhilarating space missions in human history, the first moon landing. This marked a giant leap for humanity, pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible and reshaping our understanding of space, paving the way for future space exploration. The Saturn V rocket, the most powerful launch vehicle of its time, stood at a towering 111 meters tall and weighed a massive 2,900 tons. Its sheer size and immense thrust made this mission possible. The rocket carried two key parts, the command module, piloted by Michael Collins, and the lunar module, which was the key to landing on the moon. While Armstrong and Aldrin were preparing to land and conduct experiments on the moon's surface, Collins remained in orbit, ensuring the spacecraft stayed on track. For the first few days, Apollo 11 smoothly entered space. The astronauts kept in regular contact with mission control, transmitting data via radio signals, as technology back then was far from the instant communication we're used to today. On July 19, the spacecraft entered the moon's gravitational pull, kicking off the most challenging phase of the mission, entering lunar orbit. Then came July 20, the fourth day of the flight. Apollo 11 entered the critical phase, the separation of the lunar module from the command module. Armstrong and Aldrin climbed into the lunar module, while Collins stayed in the command module, making sure the spacecraft continued its smooth orbit around the moon. After a successful separation, Armstrong and Aldrin began their descent toward the moon's surface. As they entered the moon's orbit, the spacecraft began to slow down. The lunar module's engines fired, preparing to descend. But landing wasn't going to be easy. The moon's surface is rough, with countless craters and giant rocks scattered across it. Armstrong and Aldrin were about to land in an environment without Earth's protective atmosphere, where temperatures were extreme and gravity was only 1/6 that of Earth's. This made controlling the spacecraft's stability a real challenge. Armstrong took manual control, avoiding a rocky spot that could have meant disaster. When the lunar module was just about 6 meters from the surface, Armstrong expertly maneuvered it, guiding the spacecraft to a safe landing. As the lunar module touched down, mission control and viewers around the world held their breath. Armstrong was the first to step out, becoming the first human to set foot on the moon. He took a slow, deliberate step, then famously said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." That moment became etched in history, marking the dawn of the lunar era for humanity. Next, Aldrin followed in Armstrong's footsteps, becoming the second man to walk on the moon. Together, they left the first human footprints on the lunar surface and began conducting their scientific experiments. Both astronauts wore specially designed A7L spacesuits, built to protect them from the extreme temperatures, radiation, and moon dust. But their mission wasn't just about stepping foot on the moon. They collected 20.8 kilograms of lunar soil and rock samples, which would become key for future geological studies, shedding light on the moon's formation and its connection to Earth. These samples continue to be invaluable resources for scientists today. Aldrin and Armstrong also set up a seismometer to measure lunar quakes and a solar wind detector to gather data that would aid future lunar missions. Despite the lack of Earth's atmosphere to protect them from the extreme cold and temperature swings, the equipment still managed to gather crucial data. After about 2 hours and 15 minutes on the moon's surface, the astronauts completed their mission and returned to the lunar module. The work on the moon was tough: extreme temperatures, no oxygen, but they had successfully collected samples, performed experiments, and set up the needed instruments for later missions. Once back in the lunar module, they ignited the ascent engine and docked with Collins in the command module. Collins had remained in orbit, ensuring the spacecraft's stability and monitoring the moon's trajectory. Although he didn't walk on the moon himself, Collins' role was just as vital. He kept the mission on track, providing support for Armstrong and Aldrin during their descent and return. After several more days in space, the astronauts finally began their journey back to Earth. They left the moon's orbit, heading towards Earth while maintaining communication with mission control and conducting routine checks and data transfers. On July 24, Apollo 11 safely splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, about 1,000 kilometers from Hawaii. Humanity had completed its first successful moon landing and safe return. The astronauts had achieved the historic feat, and people all around the world celebrated their bravery and intellect. Upon returning to Earth, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins were isolated in a quarantine module, just in case any potential lunar bacteria made its way back with them. Though later proven to be overly cautious, this precaution showed the concerns of the time regarding the unknowns of space. A few days later, the astronauts were welcomed as heroes, beginning their tour of honor. The success of this mission wasn't just a massive leap for space exploration, it sparked leaps in technology as well. For example, the Apollo guidance computer provided precise control for the spacecraft's navigation, which played a crucial role in later missions. Advances in life support systems, space communications, and ground support technologies also stemmed from this mission. Apollo 11 didn't just showcase America's space prowess, it opened the door for all of humanity to explore space further. The lunar samples provided invaluable insights into the moon, the solar system, and Earth, giving scientists the tools to understand the origins of our solar system and the evolution of life on Earth. The American flag on the lunar surface may not flutter like it does on Earth, but it still stands tall, a testament to humanity's monumental victory in conquering space. Behind the excitement and glory of the Apollo 11 mission lies a little-known, deeply poignant document, one that was prepared with a heavy heart. This document, a speech written by then-President Richard Nixon, was drafted in case the mission ended in failure. The risks were immense, and the unknowns of the moon were full of challenges. While we know today the result was one of joy and triumph, back then, almost everyone understood that if the mission had failed, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The failure speech was never used, but it profoundly reflects the courage and determination of humanity when faced with the unknown. It gives us a glimpse into the immense preparation and effort made by a country in an era committed to exploring the unknown. Regardless of success or failure, the Apollo 11 astronauts were already heroes, and this speech symbolizes their fearlessness and their willingness to challenge the vastness of the universe. As a special treat for viewers, we'll present the full text of this speech so you can deeply feel the potential loss and heartbreak, as well as the courage to face failure. Even in the worst-case scenario, Nixon's speech highlights the greatness of human exploration, inspiring generations to come to keep moving forward and exploring what may seem like an unreachable future. Here's the full text of President Nixon's speech, written for the possible failure of the Apollo 11 mission. As we prepare to celebrate the success of Apollo 11, we must also be mindful of the men who have made this moment possible. These two astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, have done something that no human has ever done before, and while their mission is now in the history books, we must remember what might have been. In the unlikely event of their failure, we stand together as a nation, and as a human race, proud of the tremendous courage and bravery they demonstrated. These two men knew the risks, yet they did not hesitate to answer the call to venture into the unknown. Should they lose their lives on the moon, we would still honor them as heroes. We would remember them not for the tragedy, but for the immense contribution they have made to our future. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, in their exploration of the lunar surface, will have opened the door for future generations to travel to the stars. No matter the outcome, their names will live forever in the annals of history. Even if they do not return, their bravery will have been their legacy. They have shown us that the human spirit, when faced with the unknown, is stronger than any fear or obstacle. Their courage, their drive, their willingness to challenge the universe's mysteries will be etched in our hearts forever. We salute them today, and we will continue to salute them, for they have done something that no man has done before. Whether or not we greet them upon their return, we will remember them as pioneers, as the men who opened the door to the future. The loss of these two astronauts would be felt deeply, but their spirits will not be forgotten. Their memory will inspire generations to come. We will keep their names alive, and their sacrifice will continue to light the path for our quest to understand the universe. Tonight, we do not mourn. We are proud. We honor their great adventure, and we will carry it with us forever. We also express our deepest gratitude to everyone who contributed to this mission, for their efforts will remain etched in time, no matter the outcome. They have given the world a lasting gift, and tonight, we remember them all. This speech, though never delivered, captures the raw emotion and commitment of the era, a reminder that sometimes, the greatest achievements come with the greatest risks. It's a testament to humanity's relentless pursuit of the unknown, and the spirit of exploration that continues to drive us forward. The background of this speech is truly heavy with history and emotion. Although it was never actually used, the speech added a layer of meaning to the Apollo 11 mission that we often overlook. Imagine if the mission had failed, this speech would have become a witness to history. It would not just be a tribute to Armstrong and Aldrin, it would also honor the entire Apollo program, a program filled with courage, adventure, and a relentless spirit of exploration. This moment in history wasn't just about the determination of America's space program, it was a symbol of humanity's tireless pursuit of the unknown. While Apollo 11 ultimately succeeded, we mustn't forget the preparation that went into it, the calm, calculated responses to the possibility of failure. It was this kind of comprehensive planning, readiness for the worst, and fearless spirit of exploration that left a lasting mark on the history of global space exploration. As viewers, perhaps we can reflect on the speech itself, how great exploratory missions, whether successful or not, deserve our respect and remembrance. This is not just the story of astronauts, it's the story of every human being who dares to chase a dream. This speech, even though it never became part of history, will forever symbolize the sacrifices and efforts humanity made in the pursuit of the unknown. As I write this script in 2026, I can't help but think about how facing the shadow of failure head-on, with courage, might just make the ultimate success shine even brighter. And that brilliance will continue to guide our way forward, no matter what. In July 1969, when Apollo 11 successfully landed on the moon, the technological achievements behind it were nothing short of awe-inspiring. The lunar module, the Apollo guidance computer, and the astronauts' spacesuits were all cutting-edge tech at the time. These innovations continue to influence modern space exploration. These technologies not only helped the astronauts land on the moon but also laid the solid foundation for future space missions. Let's take a closer look at these groundbreaking technological marvels. The design of the lunar module was arguably the most challenging aspect of the entire Apollo program. Its mission was to carry astronauts from lunar orbit to the moon's surface and then safely return them to orbit. To handle the moon's low gravity, vacuum environment, and extreme temperature fluctuations, the lunar module was designed with a two-stage configuration: descent and ascent stages. The descent stage was responsible for getting the astronauts to the surface, while the ascent stage would bring them back to lunar orbit. At first glance, the lunar module's design might seem simple, but it was packed with innovation and clever engineering. It was made from lightweight yet durable materials like aluminum alloy, Kevlar, and mylar film materials that could withstand the moon's intense radiation and freezing temperatures. The module's structure was streamlined, with 4 landing legs designed to stabilize the spacecraft on the moon's surface, ensuring that it wouldn't tip over or get damaged. The lunar module's design took many factors into account. To deal with the moon's low gravity, the engineers minimized the mass of the module to ensure that it could descend smoothly and withstand the impact of landing. The use of materials like Kevlar and mylar ensured that the lunar module was not only light but also strong enough to withstand the harsh lunar environment. These materials played a crucial role in protecting the spacecraft from the moon's high radiation and extreme temperatures. The Apollo Guidance Computer, AGC, is the unsung hero behind the success of Apollo 11. Sure, today we carry smartphones that have insane computing power, but back in the 1960s, the AGC was one of the most advanced space computers in the world. Its main job? To control the spacecraft's trajectory and ensure precise navigation during the flight. Now, when we look at the AGC's performance and memory by today's standards, it might seem laughably small. It had just 36,864 bytes of read-only memory and 2,048 bytes of random access memory. That's a fraction of what your phone can handle today. But here's the thing, those tiny amounts of storage didn't hold the AGC back. Through incredibly efficient programming, it ensured that every detail of the mission was carried out with pinpoint accuracy. The AGC's processing speed and precision were so impressive that even the engineers at the time were amazed. It wasn't just managing orbital calculations, it was also handling attitude control, guidance, and navigation tasks that are still incredibly complex today. Even when faced with the moon's challenging surface and ever-changing orbital conditions, the AGC was rock solid, helping the astronauts maintain perfect control of the spacecraft's position and orientation. And what's even more impressive, the team that built the AGC did all of this without the powerful modern computing tools we take for granted today. They didn't just design the hardware, they also had to write the intricate software to calculate flight trajectories, control the spacecraft's orientation, and diagnose any malfunctions. Without these efficient computing systems, Apollo 11 might not have made it to the moon, and certainly wouldn't have made it back. Now, let's talk about another mind-blowing piece of tech, the astronauts' spacesuits. The A7L spacesuits worn by the Apollo 11 crew were designed specifically for lunar exploration. These suits were multi-layered, made from materials like Kevlar, mylar film, and nylon, all of which provided top-notch protection against radiation and extreme temperatures. But the design didn't just focus on shielding astronauts from the harsh conditions, it also had to give them the freedom to move. One of the standout features of the A7L suit was the PLSS, Portable Life Support System, a small but mighty piece of equipment that supplied astronauts with oxygen, regulated temperature, and removed carbon dioxide. The PLSS was key to allowing astronauts to survive on the moon's surface for several hours. It maintained a livable environment, letting them work effectively in the freezing cold and intense heat that alternated on the lunar surface. While the A7L suit may have looked bulky, it gave astronauts a surprising amount of mobility. They could walk around, bend down, pick up lunar samples, and even operate complex scientific instruments. These tasks were vital for lunar exploration, as every sample they collected could help scientists unlock the secrets of the moon's formation and history. In particular, during the scientific experiments on the Moon, Armstrong and Aldrin, with the help of their suits, collected over 20 kilograms of lunar soil samples. These samples would go on to become priceless for scientists studying the Moon. The A7L suit's design also ensured that astronauts could perform a variety of movements, not just walking and standing, but bending, squatting, and other complex actions, laying the groundwork for future lunar research. All in all, the AGC and the A7L spacesuits weren't just pieces of technology, they were the keys to humanity's first steps on the Moon, helping to ensure that Apollo 11's mission was a historic success. After the success of Apollo 11, the three astronauts each took their own path, and their stories go far beyond that historic moment on the Moon. While their names are forever etched in history, their post-Moon journey is just as remarkable and worth telling. Neil Armstrong, the global hero, underwent a life transformation after the Moon landing. On July 20, 1969, Armstrong became the center of attention worldwide. With all the media coverage and public admiration, he had to adjust to a whole new reality. Despite the spotlight, Armstrong's modesty and humility were his trademarks, allowing him to stay grounded even under immense pressure. In 1969, Armstrong left NASA and took up a teaching position at the University of Cincinnati, starting a new chapter in academia. There, he became a professor of aerospace engineering, mentoring the next generation of aerospace students. Armstrong never saw himself as a public hero. Instead, he considered himself an ordinary person. His students and colleagues often described him as a humble and down-to-earth mentor. He once joked, "It wasn't until after the Moon landing that I realized we didn't even have time to enjoy the lunch on the Moon." This self-deprecating humor perfectly reflected his focus on duty and responsibility, not on fame. After leaving NASA, Armstrong also worked as a consultant for several aerospace companies, helping improve aviation technologies. At the same time, he served on advisory boards for various national space projects and was appointed to the President's Advisory Committee. While his later work wasn't as glamorous as walking on the Moon, his contributions to science and education were equally honorable. Armstrong rarely spoke about his moon landing experience, often saying it was simply doing what needed to be done. However, in 1971, he gave his first real public reflection on the experience during a television interview. After returning to Earth, Armstrong became more reclusive, avoiding the glittering celebrations and events. Instead, he dedicated more time to teaching and philanthropic efforts. Buzz Aldrin's journey, in contrast, was very different. Although he was the second person to walk on the Moon, his post-Moon life was filled with much more public activity than Armstrong's. Aldrin stayed active in the public eye, participating in numerous advisory roles for aerospace companies. He repeatedly voiced his vision for the Moon as humanity's new starting point and championed lunar colonization as a clear direction for humanity's future. In 1998, Aldrin published his autobiography Return to Earth, which delved into the psychological challenges he faced after the Moon landing and how he dealt with public attention. In the book, Aldrin confessed that he struggled with a deep emotional low after the Moon landing, largely due to the pressures from the public and the media. However, instead of retreating into silence, Aldrin faced his demons and shared his journey of recovery with the world through this book. Beyond writing his autobiography, Aldrin actively supported initiatives for building a lunar base. He publicly discussed the possibilities of establishing a human settlement on the Moon and encouraged private space companies to get involved in the effort. His advocacy injected fresh momentum into the modern space industry, especially in the fields of Mars and Moon exploration. Aldrin's bold ideas have played a crucial role in pushing forward space technologies. Aldrin's life wasn't confined to space exploration alone, he also contributed to military and aviation projects. As a retired Air Force colonel, his military background gave him a unique voice when discussing space exploration. In the 1990s, Aldrin participated in multiple international conferences related to space exploration, promoting cooperation and technological exchange between nations. Mike Collins, unlike Armstrong and Aldrin, remained relatively in the background when it came to the public's memory of the Apollo mission. As the command module pilot, Collins' role was to stay in orbit around the Moon, ensuring that Armstrong and Aldrin could safely return. He didn't set foot on the Moon, but his work was crucial for the success of the mission. In his book, Collins famously wrote, "I was the loneliest man on the moon." While Armstrong and Aldrin were on the lunar surface, Collins was alone, orbiting the moon, waiting for them to return. His solitary experience in the command module became an important chapter of the Apollo 11 story. After the mission, Collins often felt a bit awkward in front of the media and the public, given that he hadn't left his footprints on the moon like Armstrong and Aldrin. However, Collins didn't let the fact that he didn't land on the moon bring him down. In 1974, he published his autobiography Carrying the Fire, in which he described his isolation in space and the experiences he had while piloting the command module. Even though he didn't participate in the moon landing, he expressed a deep understanding of his own role, emphasizing that his job was just as critical to the success of the mission, ensuring the spacecraft's operations and the astronauts' safe return. After the moon landing, Collins continued to work with NASA and contributed to several space projects. In the late 1970s, he retired from NASA and entered the corporate world, becoming a successful business leader. He also served as a special advisor to President Richard Nixon, helping advance the development of U.S. aviation and aerospace technologies. Although Collins' later career didn't generate as much public fanfare, his contributions were no less important. While Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins each went down different paths after the mission, their legacy continues to inspire generations. Their unique journeys after Apollo 11 show that even heroes aren't defined by one single moment in time. They are shaped by the choices they make, the impact they have, and the lessons they leave behind. On July 20, 1969, Apollo 11 made history with the first successful moon landing, marking a giant leap for mankind. But this mission was more than just a historic touchdown on the lunar surface. It forever changed the course of global technological development, drove breakthroughs in space technology, and ignited an unprecedented global race in science and innovation. First and foremost, the success of the moon landing was a major milestone for space technology. Apollo 11 didn't just land humans on the moon, it spurred advancements in spacecraft design, computer technology, and precision instruments. The Apollo spacecraft, especially the lunar module and command module, incorporated some of the most cutting-edge technology of its time. The lunar module was designed to land on the moon's surface and then take off again, while the command module maintained communication with Earth, ensuring the safe return of the astronauts. One of the most jaw-dropping pieces of technology was the Apollo Guidance Computer, AGC. With just 36,864 bytes of read-only memory and 2,048 bytes of random access memory, it seems laughably small by today's standards. But back then, it was a marvel of space technology. The AGC was responsible for calculating flight trajectories, controlling the spacecraft's orientation, and even fine-tuning the landing accuracy, playing a pivotal role in Apollo 11's success. But the moon landing didn't just push space technology, it also sparked a wave of innovations in many other fields. High-performance materials used in spacecraft, like aluminum alloys and Kevlar, helped the spacecraft survive in the harsh space environment. The precise instruments developed to analyze lunar soil samples are now widely used in environmental monitoring and scientific research on Earth. Apollo 11's success wasn't just about technological breakthroughs. It was the spark that set off a global technological race. The moon landing wasn't just a victory for the United States, it became a defining moment in the international space race, especially during the Cold War. The Soviet Union had launched the Soyuz spacecraft and sent Yuri Gagarin into space in 1961, but America's response was the Apollo program. Though the two superpowers didn't cooperate directly, the success of Apollo 11 spurred other nations to increase their investment in space technology. Following Apollo 11's success, countries like China, Russia, and various European nations made significant strides in space exploration. China's Shenzhou spacecraft successfully carried Chinese astronauts into space, and over the next few decades, China's space program began to emerge as a major player. Russia continued to innovate in manned spaceflight and lunar exploration, completing a number of successful crewed missions. Apollo 11 also laid the foundation for future space exploration. It paved the way for future lunar base projects and Mars exploration plans. Today, organizations like NASA, SpaceX, and the European Space Agency, ESA, are pushing ahead with plans to return to the Moon, aiming to establish a long-term human presence there. The Artemis program, launched in the 2020s, intends to send astronauts back to the Moon not just for more scientific exploration, but also to lay the groundwork for future missions to Mars. One of Artemis' goals is to establish a lunar base, preparing humanity for long-term habitation on the Moon. This historic mission also serves as the launchpad for modern space endeavors. SpaceX's Starship program is building on the lessons learned from Apollo 11 to further explore transportation systems between Earth, the Moon, and Mars. Space tourism has even become a hot topic, with several companies developing private space travel. These ambitious plans aren't just distant dreams, they are tangible possibilities unfolding as a result of the doors Apollo 11 opened. And let's not forget how space technology has seeped into our everyday lives. GPS, which is now an essential tool for navigation, owes its origins to technology developed for missile guidance systems in the space industry. These innovations have transformed global communications, travel, and business, providing unprecedented convenience in daily life. More importantly, the Apollo 11 mission sparked a global interest in science. Armstrong's famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," inspired countless young people to pursue careers in science and technology. People began to realize that science wasn't just a national treasure, but a shared human endeavor. The future of exploration belonged to anyone with the courage to seek the truth. Now, standing on the foundation Apollo 11 set, we continue to chase the dream of space. Lunar bases, Mars exploration, space tourism, what once seemed impossible is now within reach. And behind all these achievements, Apollo 11's legacy is still very much alive. Since that first moon landing, humanity opened the door to the cosmos. 50 years later, its influence on technology and exploration continues to echo. Today, our curiosity about space remains boundless as we push the boundaries of the unknown. So, what does the future of space look like? Perhaps, not too long from now, we'll see humans living on the Moon, or even making the first footsteps on Mars. Apollo 11 didn't just give us a historic moment, it launched us into a future where the impossible is within our grasp. The people who change the world usually just think one step deeper. If this story made you see things differently, hit like, subscribe, and save it. See you in the next story.